Hermann Göring walked into Nuremberg, smiling. Not the nervous smile of a defeated man, not the hollow grin of someone awaiting judgment. This was confidence. This was arrogance. This was a man who believed the world still belonged to him. In the autumn of 1945, as cameras rolled and Allied officers watched closely, Göring appeared relaxed, almost opposite. He joked with guards. He laughed with fellow prisoners. At times, he looked less like a war criminal and more like a celebrity arriving at a political event. His posture was upright, his voice was strong. His eyes were sharp. This was no accident. Hermann Göring had been many things. A fighter ace in World War I, founder of the Gestapo, commander of the Luftwaffe, and for years, Adolf Hitler's chosen successor. He had lived surrounded by luxury while Europe burned. He wore medals like armor. He ruled through fear, charisma, and absolute belief in his own brilliance. And now, sitting behind glass at the Palace of Justice in Nuremberg, he believed he could still win. In Göring's mind, this trial was not a courtroom. It was a stage. He believed history would remember him not as a criminal, but as a misunderstood statesman, a patriot who had defended his nation against chaos. He was convinced that the Allies needed him, that Germany needed him, that his voice, his intelligence, and his command of rhetoric would bend the proceedings in his favor. After all, Göring had out-attacked rivals his entire life. Why would this be any different? As the trial opened, his confidence seemed justified. He dominated conversations among the defendants. Lesser Nazis leaned toward him for guidance. Some even treated him as their leader, despite the bars and guards. When journalists described the defendants, Göring stood out immediately. He was the most recognizable face, the most articulate speaker, the most defiant presence in the room, and Igno Italiano. When asked about responsibility, he didn't deny his role. When accused of aggression, he spoke of defense. When confronted with moral outrage, he countered with political logic. At first, it worked. There were moments, especially early on, when even Allied observers worried. Göring was sharp. He understood the legal framework. He challenged definitions. He spoke calmly, while others stuttered or panicked. He presented himself as the embodiment of a fallen state, not a criminal enterprise. Some feared he might turn the trial into propaganda, but beneath the surface, something was already changing. Because for the first time in his life, Hermann Göring was no longer in control. Gone were the silk uniforms, the jeweled rings, the ornate offices. Gone were the servants and subordinates who once leapt at his commands. Gone were the drugs he had relied on for years, morphine, that dulled his reality and fed his sense of invincibility. Now, there were only routines. Searches, lights out, orders he could not refuse. Every morning, guards not generals decided when he woke up. Every evening, doors locked from the outside. His titles meant nothing. His medals were gone. His voice carried no authority beyond the walls of a cell. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, that reality began to gnaw at him. The man who once commanded air fleets now asked permission to speak. The man who once signed death orders now stood under constant surveillance. The man who believed himself untouchable was now evidence. Still, Göring clung to confidence. He laughed louder. He spoke more forcefully. He leaned into performance, as if volume alone could push the truth away. Then the documents began to appear. Not rumors, not accusations, but paper. Orders bearing his signature. Speeches transcribed word for word. Memos detailing forced labor, terror bombing, economic plunder. Each document stripped away another layer of illusion. Each page was undeniable. When prosecutors read Göring's own words aloud in court, the room changed. The laughter faded. The theatrical pauses grew shorter. The clever counter-arguments became defensive. For the first time, Göring wasn't shaping the narrative, he was trapped inside it. The confidence that once filled the room now felt strained, and the world was watching. Outside the courtroom, newspapers no longer described him as defiant or commanding. They began using different words: manipulative, cold, unrepentant. Psychologists studied him. Reporters analyzed his gestures. Cartoonists mocked his size, his vanity, his grandiosity. The image Göring had carefully crafted for decades was collapsing publicly, internationally. This was not martyrdom. This was exposure, and that terrified him more than any sentence ever could, because Hermann Göring did not fear death the way ordinary men do. He had lived surrounded by violence. He had ordered destruction on a massive scale. What he feared was humiliation. He had entered Nuremberg believing he would dominate history one last time, that he would outshine his judges, outlast the trial, and secure his legacy through sheer force of personality. Instead, he was being reduced line by line, document by document into something he could not tolerate. A criminal. A liar. A failed leader. Months passed. The man who had once laughed now slept poorly. The man who had once commanded now waited. The man who had once believed in his own myth now watched it unravel in real time. By the time the verdict approached, Hermann Göring was no longer the same figure who had walked into Nuremberg smiling. The confidence was thinner. The arrogance was brittle. The illusion of control was gone. And the question was no longer whether he could win the trial. It was whether he could survive the truth. Because what really broke Hermann Göring at Nuremberg was not a single question, not a single prosecutor, not even the sentence itself. It was the moment he realized the world no longer feared him, and never would again. After World War II, the world wanted justice. The Nuremberg Trials began, and one man in the dock believed he was still in charge, Hermann Göring, stripped of his titles, medals, and power. He arrived not as a defeated man, but as a showman, ready for his final performance. He saw the trial not as a legal proceeding, but as a battle of wits, a historical debate he was convinced he would win. From the moment he entered the courtroom, Göring acted as if he were holding court. He'd lost a significant amount of weight in captivity, and with his mind now clear from a long-standing drug dependency, he was sharper and more formidable than anyone expected. He saw himself as the chief defendant, the true heir to the Nazi legacy, and he was determined to defend it to the very end. He believed he could outsmart the Allied prosecutors, whom he viewed as inferior amateurs. The chief American prosecutor, Robert Hodgson, decided to open the trial with a powerful, sweeping indictment against the entire Nazi regime. The strategy was to use the Nazis' own meticulous records against them, films, documents, and orders that detailed their atrocities in cold, hard-to-refute detail. The prosecution thought the sheer volume of evidence would be overwhelming, a knockout blow from the start. But for Göring, this was an opportunity. He listened intently, sometimes nodding, sometimes smirking. When the prosecution showed films of concentration camps, shocking the world and even some of his fellow defendants, Göring remained unmoved, often dismissive. He saw this not as evidence of his guilt, but as a chance to contextualize, to explain, to debate. He whispered commentary to his fellow defendants, acting as a leader even in the dock, trying to rally them to his defiant cause. His moment to shine, as he saw it, came during his cross-examination. Göring took the stand, confident and articulate. He wasn't there to apologize. He was there to argue. He skillfully dodged questions, turned the prosecution's logic on its head, and presented himself as a German patriot who had only done his duty. For a moment, it seemed like his strategy was working. He ran circles around Justice Jackson, who was more of a legal theorist than a courtroom brawler. The press noted it. The audience felt it. Göring was winning the public relations battle from the witness stand. He was articulate, defiant, and almost charismatic. This was a major miscalculation for the prosecution. Jackson had underestimated Göring's sheer force of personality. The trial's momentum seemed to shift, but the Allies had another card to play. A more tenacious, direct prosecutor, Sir David Maxwell Fyfe, from the British team, took over. Unlike Jackson, Maxwell Fyfe was a master of cross-examination. He didn't debate ideology with Göring. He trapped him in specifics. He brought out document after document, order after order, signed by Göring himself. He hammered him on the creation of the Gestapo, his role in the final solution, and the plundering of art from across Europe. Suddenly, Göring's grand narrative began to crumble. He couldn't explain away his own signature on an order to Reinhard Heydrich to organize the total solution of the Jewish question. He couldn't rationalize the mountains of stolen wealth found in his homes. The confident showman became a cornered, irritable old man, caught in a web of his own making. His attempts to justify his actions sounded hollow and self-serving. The facade of the patriot was stripped away, revealing the architect of immense suffering. In the end, the evidence was undeniable. Göring was found guilty on all 4 counts: conspiracy to wage aggressive war, crimes against peace, war crimes, and crimes against humanity. He was sentenced to death by hanging, but Göring was determined to have the last word. He had always believed a soldier's death should be by firing squad, not the common hangman's noose. He petitioned the court. His request was denied. Still defiant, Hermann Göring would not let the Allies have their final victory over him. On the night before his scheduled execution, he took a hidden cyanide capsule and ended his own life. It was his final act of control, a last-ditch effort to write his own ending. He cheated the gallows, but he could not cheat history. His grand performance at Nuremberg ultimately failed. He didn't control the narrative. He simply became its most infamous cautionary tale, a story of arrogance, evil, and ultimate self-delusion. Thanks for watching. If you found this story compelling, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit that notification bell for more deep dives into history. See you in the next video. For Hermann Göring, the first real blow did not come in the courtroom. It came in silence. Before the trial even began, Göring was stripped methodically, deliberately of everything that had once defined him. His uniforms were taken away. The medals that had covered his chest, symbols of glory and authority, were removed and catalogued like evidence. The rings, the decorations, the visual language of power that had protected him for decades. What remained was a prisoner's clothing. Plain, anonymous, equal. Even more devastating was what he could no longer access. For years, Göring had lived under the influence of powerful drugs, especially morphine, which insulated him from stress and reinforced his grand sense of self. Every personal item inspected. His cell was searched regularly, sometimes without warning. This was not negotiation. This was control. For a man who had once commanded millions, the humiliation was suffocating. The guards were not impressed by his titles. They did not flinch at his stare. They did not respond to sarcasm or charm. Some were younger than him. Some barely knew his name. To them, he was not Reichsmarschall Göring. He was prisoner number 5. At first, Göring tried to assert himself. He argued over procedures, questioned orders, made sharp remarks designed to re-establish dominance, but the responses were always the same: impersonal, final. The door closed when the guard decided. The lights went out on schedule. No exceptions.